Hi all, today we will discuss about Java with Spring Boot microservice real-time interview questions. So we will cover whatever the microservice interview questions has been asked, so that we need to cover. So we have collected most of the interview questions related for the microservice using Spring Boot implementation that need to be covered today. First question is, what is microservice? Why would someone want to look at implement it? So microservices is nothing but is architecture styles for the structures where we can implement the microservice based application to provide a loosely coupled independent maintainable and testable deployments, and all those things will be there, so easily we can deploy anywhere. Multiple applications can be developed simultaneously, develop and test. All those things will happen through that module Y. So that is a microservices patterns. Right now is in trending. Everyone is using microservices application. So these things question, this type of questions as asked in the most of the interviewer will ask. The second questions will ask when should one consider microservice kind of architectures? There are two cases for this. If you already worked on the monolithic application, in the single applications, all the modules will be there. So if you want to modify any changes, then all the applications need to be stopped in monolithic. But in microservices, for the new applications, while we implemented microservices, then we have to divide it in the multiple module, and then parallelly we can implement, parallelly we can test, parallelly we can deploy it like that. So that type of questions also will ask, and the third questions will ask how would you test the microservice based architecture. So while we testing, we have a multiple unit integration testing, which will be test all the functionality of microservices. So one should have a contract to assess this client not breaking end-to-end testings with the microservices. So this type of query responsibility segregations and all, we can do the testings and all. And other questions will ask what is the service discovery and how it is useful. So service discovery is mostly used to is one of the service running under the microservice architectures, which will be tested all the services. So service discovery is used suppose if you are using a Spring Cloud component, so in that Eureka service registry is there where we will register all the microservice applications. So how, if any request is coming from the client, then how this will be searched. So service discovery will be come in these pictures. They will register all the service registry informations which is registered in Eureka service, and they will scan or maybe the call of all the applications. So if you want to go the definitions here, this is the protocol definition. So that's what is the service discovery, how it is useful or helpful for that. Other questions which asked mostly in the interview questions of Spring Boot microservices, they are what is client side and server side discovery. So client side means that will be open in this directly connecting these load balancers. This architecture patterns of the client connectivity connects the service registry and try to fetch the services. This is the client. And then if we go for the server side, so mostly in the client side we'll have a load balancers and all that need to enable or add this, so that will happen through the client side. But server side discovery will have a proxy or API gateway. So most of the company seen a API gateway like a Joule and all, while we are registering all the service details in this API gateway. So if any request will come from the client or maybe the users, that will we go for the API gateway, and then we will transfer this request to the particular service on registry, that is a Eureka service. So we have two ways of client and server side service discovery. Client side will have a load balancers connected, and then service side will have a API gateway. Then explain how you scale a microservice based system. So scale a microservice based system, we can increase the number of instances by bringing up more container So one can also apply the cache at the microservice level, which can be easy to manage. The invalidations of the cache can be done easily in microservice. So it depends on this. Like suppose if you want to scale, so there will be some auto scale up also will be there while you used any Spring Cloud, or sorry, any cloud component like AWS and all. And also you can mention this increase the number of instance while request will come, or maybe the traffic will be load high. So that way we can scale the applications. So this way, if you want to go for the definitions, here is this way of can do. Another question says asked like define microservice architecture. So like if you want to define the microservices architecture, so there is this type of like while we develop a microservice, we can scale, distributed, deploy, testing microservices deployed in the different module. So that is called microservices. So microservices are a small autonomous service work together loosely coupled architectures Nicholson neutral sequence around. So these things we have in this defined architectures. Like if someone asks the microservice architectures, then you can inform these all the definitions. Then other questions will ask what is the difference between SON and microservice. So SAO is before we use like a monolithic and SOA based applications. Now we used our microservices. So that microservices while we reused, then we will divide this component is a different way. And so this type of definitions also there. And others is what is bounded context. So bounded context is a central patterns in domain driven design. So everything is related for this like a bounded like a BDD. BDD is deals with a large model divided into the different bonded context. So that bonded context will be explained about their interrelationship. So these things also some of the interviewer asked like bonded context. So in that time I was not sure what was there. So I gone through this definition of bonded context. And then other questions like mostly ask like characteristic of a microservice architectures, like how high cohesion, loose coupling, bonded context. This is the bonded context, meaning like a microservice serve a bound context in a domain. It communicate with the rest domain by using interface for the bonded context. And then continuously deployment, development, fault tolerance, decentralized security, NoSQLs, database management, SQLs. We can use anything, web tokens and all, authorization, security implementation. So these all are the where we have a characteristics or features of microservice, we can say. And then which I collected the information like what type of benefits of microservice architectures, like autonomous deployment will be there, and cultural shift will be there, technology diversifications will be there. Easily we can go for the different technology to grace up as per the requirement of client or maybe the environment, which will be changes on time to time. DevOps cultures will be there. So this stuff DevOps will be there, all the operations related for the DevOps, which will be used for development plus operations. Technology diversification, and then cultural shift. All. And apart from this we have this one. Other questions mostly I asked like I was not sure like what is polyglot persistence. Can this idea is used in monolithic application as well? So polyglot persistent is a persistence is all about using a different database for the different business need with a single distributed system. So we have a different database product market and each have a specific business required. So this is called polyglot polyglot persistence. So can we use in monolithic? So it depends on the requirements. We have RTBMS, Mongo, Cassandra, Amazon DynamoDB, Redis, New, say Graph, DB. So that we can use. So yeah, we can use this polyglot persistence in microservices, not in monolithic application. What are the challenges in microservice? While we develop, there will be multiple challenges for the deployment, development, testings, and all to make monolithic and microservices. So we have some of the positive like advantage and disadvantage will be there that you can collect. Like while we develop microservices, we'll have this type of things will be there. Other questions ask like why microservice is better than monolithic. So then you can say like many things are there: security, transactions, deployment, development, testings, monitoring, and all will be easy. So easily we can convert from this. Like here you can see the monolithic application. So monolithic application in the single container where product, shipment, cart, and orders was there. If you want to change anything on cart, then all the applications need to be stopped, because this is bounded with web layer. So that web layer is called all those applications inside this container, that is called monolithic. But if you will go for the same application in microservices, we'll have a separate web layer for product, shipment, cart, and orders. So if you want to change, modify anything in the product, other shipment, cart, and orders will be work. So there's no issue. You can connect with multiple database, single database, and all. So this is the many advantages are there in microservices. So we can go for microservice instead of monolithic or SEO pattern. Other questions like how to convert large application into microservices. So if you have a multiple big applications was developed, now you want to change this application to the monolithic to microservices. So what you will do? For example, we have e-commerce applications that need to be converted in this. Like we have a product inventory, product review, feedback, order, payment, shipment, and all are there, which we have seen here. This is the e-commerce based application, suppose. So in that we have a multiple modules are there. Now you want to convert into the, suppose that is a monolithic, now you want to convert as a microservices. How you will do? So if you want to do, then the separate web applications, web app need to be created for notification, users, demand, shipment, payment, orders, inventory, product reviews, and all. So once you will do this, then easily we can develop parallelly, and then easily we can track the applications. Everything will be there in the microservices. So you can go use for the Spring Cloud component like Strix, Eureka, service registry, load balancers, and these things, and through that we can manage the applications to monitor the applications easily. Other questions ask like how to stop a Spring Boot based microservices at a startup if it can't connect with config server during bootstrap. If you want to halt the services when it is not able to locate the config server during the bootstrap, you can need this one following property in bootstrap YAML. So bootstrap YAML is the property file which will be loaded before the your main application or main YAML file. So bootstrap related for all the server, all the cloud related, all the config server related configurations which will be called through the bootstrap. So if your bootstrap configuration server is not calling, so that time you can do this one, boot spring.cloud config fail fast true. So this is the configuration which need to be made. Startup fail with the exceptions which config server is not readable or during the bootstrap. So in that time you will get some proper exceptions and all. We can also enable like a retry mechanism where microservice will retry 6 times before throwing the exceptions. So retriable will be there multiple times, they will retry. If nothing will happen, then it will throw the exception. Just need to add the retry and spring boot starter class equal to this. How to partition a large application into the microservice architectures. So microservice should be autonomous and divided based on business capability. So each software component should have a single well-defined responsibility and principle of bounded context should use for create highly cohesive software. For example, e-commerce applications while we are creating and partition in the following microservice based like product inventory, product review and order services. So in that cases, how to partition large application into microservice. So that you can go through that like how we will divide single responsibility principles of the bounded context for the domain division should be created highly cohesive software. So that we separate we can develop and then we'll do the functionality as per the microservice architecture. And other questions ask like big a how big a single microservice should be. Depends on the requirement. Suppose if your microservices have single microservice and very big applications, because of multiple business operations need to be performed there, like we'll have a multiple controller with the particular microservices that we can handle. So this way we can handle like while you want big microservice should work, how what are the things will be there, inbound, outbound, responsibility, context, principles and all will be there. Through that we can do. And how to microservice communicate each other. We'll have a multiple way to communicate each other, but mostly we'll have a two-way, synchronous and asynchronous. So while we will go for the synchronization, we'll have a REST template over the HTTP method, and if we'll go for the any asynchronous communications, we'll have a messaging queue which will be AMQP, JMS or Kafka. So mostly right now we will have a Kafka which will be used for the asynchronous communication. Others we have a REST template through that protocol we will call. So here we have discussed like how synchronous communications call and how REST asynchronous communications will call. And others like why should be preferred communications style in microservice, synchronous and asynchronous. What should be preferred, like where like what type of communications is preferred, like so that mostly will go for the depends on the requirement. If you have a one-to-one communications, then better we can go for the HTTP method. If you have a multiple communications like asynchronous and all, then depends on the requirement, you will go for the either RabbitMQ, AMQ or maybe a Kafka and all. So it all depends on the business requirement where we can go for this either synchronous and asynchronous. And other questions will ask like what is the difference between orchestration and choreography in microservice context. So mostly this is used for the handle the transactions. So while we use a multiple microservices and all the microservices are dependent in each others, and there we'll have a fulfill the requirement of transaction. So how this transaction role pattern commit will happen, through that we'll have a saga pattern through the as a design pattern where we can handle this orchestration and choreography based handling the transactions. So that things will have a practicals. So through that we can understand. Also you can go for the definitions of orchestration and choreography there, how we are handling the transactions related for Spring Boot and microservices. Other questions ask like how frequent microservice will be released in production. So for that many ways are there, like how frequent depends on the requirement. Easily if you want to develop anything directly, you can have a CI/CD configured and do the deployment, and we have auto CI/CD has been configured so that a script will run and then deployment will happen, or it will have any changes automatically that will be triggered the call and that will be deployed. It depends on the requirement, like how frequently a microservice will release into the production. So mostly that will go for the different environment. If all the testing and scenario will be completed, then that will be go for the release to production. So frequently is not right answer, depends on the business requirement. We'll do the thing. Another is what are the cloud native applications. Cloud native applications is a style of application development that encourages easy adoptions of best practice area, continuous delivery and continuous deployment. So cloud native mostly is used for this AWS services or maybe Azure, any type of cloud which we can use to the deployment and development. So mostly we have a where AWS or Azure's Cloud Foundry there, that is we can use instead of AWS use. So these all are there, and Spring Boot, Spring Cloud, Docker, Jenkins, Git, the few tools through that write a cloud native application without much effort. So DevOps will have a continuous microservice container, key native and all. This is microservices, this is DevOps, this is continuous integration. Container is a Docker, so that create an image of particular applications. How will other questions is how will you develop microservice using Java? So microservice while you want to develop, then Spring Boot along with Spring Cloud is very option to start a building of microservice in Java language. So while you want to develop any application based on the Java, then Spring Boot is required. It's a Spring framework that Spring Boot is a concept which is required, so that we can develop an architectures which will follow the microservices base. And then other questions, and also you can create a Docker image and use the Spring Cloud component and deploy this. Other is, well, what is API gateway? So that API gateway is a way where our request will come, that is handling by the API gateway, either Joule and others, so that request will check and then it's verified and that will be transferred to the particular server. So client request will come in and that will go for the communicate with the API gateway, and then it will be sent to the particular server microservices. So features of API gateway, we have multiple features like a Spring Cloud discovery, client integrations, request rate limit, path rewrite, and history circuit breakers for resiliency. How to achieve a zero downtime during deployment? So that is very good questions, and always most of the interview will ask how to achieve zero downtime during the deployment. So as the name says, zero downtime means do not bring out production environment. It's a clear way of deploying your changes to the production, giving point in time at least one services will remain available to the customer. Means like if you are doing any deployment, then at a time we'll have a blue-green deployment. So some of the deployment will be going on, other instance will be started, that will be their production, so that customer will add the features. And if any deployment will complete, then that will be shifted from this, and then others green deployment will be started, like so that balanced and applications will be worked, and customer won't know about the deployments and all is going, or maybe something happening that. So that is the very good features in microservice. We have a blue clean deployment. So how this will be happen, that you can see the configurations details and all, where we handling this. And yeah, so mostly this type of questions we have seen, it will be asked in the interview questions. So once you prepare this all, then out of that I think not will be much questions. Mostly that type of questions will be taken care of the most of the company which I have seen, like all the company. How to achieve zero downtime, deployment blue-green, where there the database changes. So this is backward compatible changes will be not compatible changes, and how to maintain a seed in microservices. So automaticity, consistency, isolability, durability and all. So durability and these things we can handle through the microservices. So we have a way like the Saga, it's a design pattern, through that we can handle our transaction mechanism. So this type of things will be taken care in microservices. So we have like most of the 30 questions we have covered, and these things will be taken care or maybe ask for all the interview questions which I have collected. Thank you for that. Yeah, so that's it from my side, I think.